Welcome back to Cabarabia, my monthly rumination on all things relevant to the world of cabaret and the nightclub experience. Every program, I profile and interview the leading performers, composers, musicians, producers, and venue owners, all the people that bring you live performances in intimate settings. And welcome back. Welcome back to Cabarabia, my little podcast that could. I am so glad to have you watching today. I get to share with you two of my favorite people on earth. This is a couple that I've known for quite a long time, and they have a very interesting story. They live down in the Manhattan Beach area, and they both have been very active theater professionals for a very long time. And a couple years ago, they started producing plays locally, and just recently they began a production company that they call New Stuff Productions. And let me introduce you to them, and then we'll tell you a little bit more about their story. Please welcome my friends Jack Messenger and Lois Bourgon. Hello. How are you all today?
Hi, Clifford. Good to see you.
Good. So Jack and Lois have been producing a series of events, and I wanted to talk to them on my podcast today because they've had a very interesting reaction to the coronavirus quarantine. They had a scheduled series of theatrical shows that were supposed to go up, and rather than canceling them, they've decided to move them online, which I think has really been very, very interesting, and I wanted to talk to them a little bit about that. Jack, tell us a little bit about New Stuff Productions.
Be glad to. New Stuff Productions was spawned out of an idea of, now what do we do? We're tired of doing the same old stuff in the same old places year after year after year. And Lois and I got it in our heads that we wanted to try some new stuff, something that was provocative, something that was edgy, something that maybe might be more contemporary. So we came up with the idea of doing New Stuff Productions, and our first two productions out of the gate were two plays. One was called Distracted by Lisa Loomer, about a child who has ADD and his family, and we donated the proceeds of that to the Manhattan Beach Education Foundation. And then we did a play called Seminar, which is about the writing community in New York, stemming out of a rivalry between 5 students locked up in an apartment in New York City. Alan Rickman was the star on Broadway. Of course, we couldn't get Alan to do it here on account of the fact, well, he's no longer with us anymore. But we were able to get some very, very good people to do this play. And then we were struck with the coronavirus. And we had a slate of plays all scheduled to go. And then I got together with our mutual friend, Andrew Apple, who's probably just on the other side of your microphone there.
Yes,
and Andrew and I came up with the idea of doing these plays as online staged readings. I mean,
so that your first one was Superior Donuts, right? I know you had planned a live production of it, and you guys made the decision to move it on to online.
We did. Superior Donuts, which we had done at a staged reading festival that we held in our backyard last year, and it was the most popular play. It was fun, funny. Tracy Letts wrote it. How can you miss with Tracy Letts? And so we were able to put it online, and we had a wonderful response. And it's still online for anybody who wants to see it. Just search YouTube for New Stuff Productions Superior Donuts, and it'll be there. And the next production we did was not exactly new stuff, but it was the perfect vehicle to do online for two people like us, because we have problems learning lines. So we were able to absolutely read this and have it all play well. And the play is called Love Letters by A.R. Gurney.
And you are a longtime real-life couple.
And that always helps, yeah.
Yes.
Lois and I have been together nigh on 25 years now, and hopefully we'll get 25 more at least. So,
yes, indeed. Just stay in quarantine.
That's right.
Stay here, don't do anything except online theater.
Right.
You know?
And you all met doing a production of Bells Are Ringing, I understand. And
That's right.
Yeah.
as I hear it, bells were ringing and sparks were flying. You fell
Yeah,
in
and
love.
eyebrows were being raised, and
and all these many years later, here you are, still together.
Still
I love
here.
that.
She's the love of my life, and that's going to change.
Soulmate.
So now the next play on the roster is coming around the corner on Friday, July 31st. You're going to do a production of a play, Jack, that you wrote called Thoughts and Prayers.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this.
Thoughts and Prayers was an exclamation point on my life at that point, because through the years I had experienced American gun violence internationally. I was in Canada, I was living in England. All I would see were TV shows and movies about guns and more guns. And when I moved back to the United States at the tender age of 19, my friend said, "What are you going to do about all the gun violence in the USA?" And I went, "Oh, come on. It's just what you see in TV and movies. It doesn't really happen." And of course, I came back, and right away there were riots in New Jersey. Right away there were riots in Detroit. Right away there were the assassinations of Martin Luther King, followed by the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. And then there were burnings in cities, and I'm going, what the heck kind of country is this? Are we ever going to get this straightened out? Maybe I'll go back to England. Well, we'll cut to a bunch of years later, and I'm sick to death of watching people get mown down by gun violence in shopping malls and in churches and in places of business, and most especially high schools. And then Parkland happened, and I had been hoping up to that point that people would get on the idea, the creatives in this country, especially here in LA, and write a movie or a play about the horrific gun violence caused by the allowance of semi-automatic weapons and automatic weapons in this country. And it wasn't happening. So I said, you know what? I've never written a play before, but by God, I'm going to write this play. So I sat down and I wrote it, and the play is called Thoughts and Prayers, and it's going to be live on YouTube on Friday night, July 31st, 2020 at 5 p.m. And the play is essentially about a Republican senator from Texas who finally has his world turned upside down, and he begins to see the light. And that's all I want to say about it right now. And hopefully our audience, Clifford, your audience, any audience out there with a conscience will watch this.
I think you definitely found a way in to the storytelling. And I think you've got your finger on something that's a very compelling way to tell the story. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the play. This is a funny episode today because this is a podcast that's about live entertainment, and 90% of what I do in this forum is nightclub performers and cabaret performers per se. And that is the way I know you originally. I've known you and your family and Lois and Jack as a couple for around 15 years now, I think. I was trying to figure it out the other day, but roughly about 15 years ago, I was introduced to Lois by our mutual friend Todd Murray, who's a wonderful singer himself. And she had just recorded an album called Seasons of Love. We were just saying it was probably in 2007, I think. And she and I got together to produce her CD launch party with a show at the Cinegrill at the Hollywood Roosevelt, which went very, very well. And working with Lois, I soon learned that one of her earliest professional experiences was working with Debbie Reynolds. So that was a hoot. Anything you want to tell us about your time with Debbie?
Oh, it was such a magical time of my life. Just to have had that experience of knowing her, knowing Carrie, being kind of in her inner circle for a few years. My friends and I, who were in her show, there were 5 ladies and 5 guys. We all stayed in contact with her over the years, and it was truly one of the most, like I said, magical times of my life. Something so wonderful to have had to look back on, to share with other people, and yeah, just it was. She was great. She called herself Mother, and we were all free to come to her if we needed to for any reason. And she was just a great person. Truly,
You know,
the girl.
I'm hoping that when the smoke clears on this whole COVID experience, that someday we'll be able to be on the new stuff docket with a show about Debbie, your time with Debbie. We're talking about that'll be the next thing we do. When COVID hit, I actually was with Lois. Lois and I had taken a trip down to San Diego to perform the show we put together called High Standards. And I got to say, I always tell Lois that I'm not just being an idle flatterer. It's really one of my favorite shows I've ever worked on. We concentrate on the music of Gershwin and Harold Arlen and Irving Berlin and Cole Porter, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Arrangements by Steve Rollins, the great jazz accompanist who's been our pianist together for as long as we've worked together, and we had performed it on a very, very horribly rainy day in San Diego on March 12th. And as we came off the stage, Lois got a text from Jack, who said to her, "They've just closed Broadway." I'll never forget it. We were in the audience of that theater, having just performed the show, and you said, "Basketball is closed, and gatherings over 100, gatherings over 50, no, blah blah blah." All right in the aftermath of finishing that show. And then that weekend, we were supposed to do High Standards in Manhattan Beach. I think there were only like 4 seats sold out, right? I mean, we were sold out, just 4 seats left. It was a benefit for the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. And on my train ride back home from San Diego, we got the call that the theater pulled the plug because the governor said no gatherings. And that was basically 4 months ago today, basically. Yeah. And here we are.
On the way, I also got a message saying the schools have closed.
Right. Yes.
Almost. Am I now?
Yes, you are very active in raising your grandson. And who is how old?
He'll be 11 on Monday.
11 on Monday. So you live that life as well. You live the life as a guardian of an 11-year-old. Which what must that be like these days? Do you do the homeschooling?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
We actually he had a lot of help because he is some teachers that helped him as well. But yeah, we did the whole homeschooling thing and he's still doing some tutoring over the summer online, and it's worked out pretty well for him.
You hear such funny things on TV with all these stars that are home with their children now that aren't used to being home with their children. And I saw Jane Krakowski say, "I think I flunked 4th grade," which I think was so funny.
I know I flunked math.
And then I saw Lin-Manuel Miranda interviewed the other day, like, this is like truly a genius. And he says, we just finished kindergarten with my son. And he said, we got to the point where my wife and I had to do alternating days because neither of us could handle it 2 days in a row. He said it was the most stressful thing I've ever been through. teaching kindergarten to his son by Zoom, which is so funny. Let's see, I got another picture here. Oh, this is one of my favorite pictures. You know, actually, Andrew Apple, who we referred to earlier, created this graphic. Lois has had a very prestigious theater career. She's played literally every leading lady in the history of theater. Any leading lady you can mention, but she began her career as a young Dorothy, and later in life she did Glenna. And so I asked Andrew to put together a graphic that combined those two, and we use this to promote Lois's stage work sometimes. And I've always loved that. Isn't that beautiful? And then one of my favorite things we did is a couple of years ago. Jack threw a surprise birthday party. He engaged me to help him throw a surprise birthday party for Lois, and it was just such a fabulous day. Her whole family came out and had a fabulous cake, and all filled the audience with her friends, and it was a very special night. And that's just a very special memory. I like to have that. So,
Clifford, I had a lot of help from you because we conspired to do this birthday party up in Hollywood at the Prospect nightclub, and we both agreed that we would get her to sing at her birthday party.
That's right.
I thought I was singing for a group of people that I didn't know.
Right. You know, it was a very traumatic thing for me because I don't like to lie. I mean, I literally, it's just like it's a discipline I've worked on for a very long time. I literally almost never lie. It's not even a white lie ever. And so to throw a surprise birthday party gave me such agita because I was like, I have to misrepresent to Lois, the person I love the most, to tell her something that's not true and try to trick her into believing something. And it was just so traumatic, but the payoff was pretty great, I must admit, when you came out and recognized that the whole thing was there for you. So anyway, so we go back a long way, and so which brings us back to thoughts and prayers. That's once again, it's coming up on Friday, July 31st. And Jack, tell us the when and where and about the town hall afterwards.
With the help of our very talented producer, Andrew Apple, who we all know very well. It is going to be on Friday evening, July 31st at 5 p.m. Pacific time. The play is about 80 minutes. There will not be an intermission. We want to keep people as engaged as we possibly can. I don't think people in theater land have ever seen anything quite like this surrounding this topic. This is a play about gun violence and the politics of the NRA, and it gets pretty down and dirty. So if you're at all interested in curing the problem of gun violence, I invite everybody to please tune in. Afterwards, we have a very special, and I mean special, virtual town hall to discuss gun violence, which people will be able to do because they'll see the texts coming in from themselves in the audience, or any other audience member will come in during the show commenting on the play that they're looking at. But then afterwards, during the town hall, we expect to have text questions being submitted to our panel of 4 wonderful people, 2 of whom we have on the air today. And those questions will be answered by the likes of Fred Guttenberg, who is the father of daughter Jamie Guttenberg, who was tragically killed on that day. We'll have the father of Guac Oliver, whose name is Manny Oliver, and he will be there online. Both of these gentlemen will be live from Parkland, Florida, along with Dawn and Andy, who are here today. Thank God they've been here for a while, and we're very grateful to them. And we'll have Andy and Dawn tell the story of how all of this came about in the first place. But speaking to just the production of Thoughts and Prayers, it's July 31st, 5 o'clock, and it'll be live on YouTube. And we're hoping that so many people tune in. We're going to accept donations to Fred's charity, Orange Ribbons for Jamie. And we'll see if we can't get this gun violence problem taken care of in the next election. God will.
Okay, well, we have a little bit of what they call a sizzle reel, a little demo reel of highlights from the Hollywood production. As I said, when you wrote it right away, you did a staged reading in Manhattan Beach. And then a few months later after that, in November of that year, 2018, you got a theater in Hollywood and produced a version of it. So we have some video package of that.
Won't you please give a warm and rousing NRA welcome? And I give you Congressman Abraham Griffin.
The Second Amendment says we have the right to bear arms. I can't just up and leave without knowing how this whole chaotic mess turns out.
The NRA is the last bastion of freedom in this country. It's the difference between liberty and enslavement.
The Second Amendment says we have the right to defend ourselves against an oppressive government who wishes to take away our freedoms.
I don't know what they mean.
Well, to God and Texas politics.
I'm not so sure God hangs a shingle out in Texas anymore.
We want you to be the keynote speaker at our next Texas NRA convention in Dallas.
What, are you kidding me? In Washington, it is our job to uphold the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. No. Look at the mayhem and havoc we wreak in the name of fear. As the guns of our NRA rain down rapid-fire artillery on the country music fans in Las Vegas, the club goers in Orlando, the student commuters at Virginia Tech. I had this gnawing deep in my heart that this was a really bad decision. And what do we choose to do? Nothing.
We've decided to double our donation to your fall campaign.
Only thing necessary for the triumph of evil was for good men to do nothing. Thoughts and prayers. They are empty tropes. As we bury our heads in the sand and our loved ones in their graves.
Baptisms of fire.
All right, there you go. So when you produced the stage reading, a very interesting piece of synchronicity happened. And Lois, why don't you tell us the story of how you came to know Andy and Dawn before we bring them out?
Okay. I was taking a walk with my grandson and my dog. We were walking up the hill on our street, and this beautiful lady was walking down the hill with her dog, somebody I hadn't met before, and we stopped to chat. Discovered that she had a 10-year-old son, well, I guess he was 9 at the time, and we decided to get the boys together to play because they just lived up the street and had just moved in a couple months before. And lo and behold, just that same week or the next week, we were producing the staged reading of Thoughts and Prayers, and there was an article in our local throwaway paper about it, and Dawn called me and said, I have to talk to you. You will not believe this. We just moved here from Parkland, Florida, and we lived across the street from the school. My husband was in the school district. We were very, very much affected by this whole thing. And therefore, we were able to get together with regards to the play as well as a play date for the kids. And that's how we met. It was just serendipitous.
When Dawn happened to mention to Lois that they had just moved from Parkland, and that Dawn called Lois because Bradley, their son, who is a key role in our production of Thoughts and Prayers, talked to his mom and said, there's these people down the street who are doing this whole show about gun violence in America, and we probably need to talk to them. And so Dawn and Andy became very fast friends, real simpatico, confidants, if you will. And we asked them to help us out as advisors on this play, and they have really helped us an awful lot. They garnered an awful lot of support, not only for their friends in Florida, but for people here who want to get behind the movement to end gun violence in this country. It's been nothing short of remarkable, and we're grateful to them.
Yes, I remember when I came to that first stage reading, the very first time out of the gate, before really anybody knew what this was going to be like, you had Dawn and Andy speak after the play, and they made such a profound effect on me. I just was blown away by the sort of wisdom and perspective and hope that they brought to the subject. And so I'm thrilled that we have them with us here today. So please welcome to the screen Andy and Dawn Bronstein. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. And, you know, I am going to mention, because I'm so grateful, I know you changed a few little last-minute summer plans to be able to be. So I appreciate that so much. Thank you. I see you're wearing the T-shirts, orange ribbons for Jamie. I'm glad to know that there are going to be donations for that raised by this production. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your experience of this.
Oh, well, you know, we can't even scratch the surface of this experience at large. You know, ours was more from an outside perspective, just to kind of paint our picture. I was an administrator in the school district on a medical leave, so I was currently off of work. It was actually, you know, February 14th, so I had taken the day with my lovely wife, and we went to the beach. And rather than our normal routine of me walking down the street to pick up our son from school, we decided to pick him up by car. Got back to the house where my wife was vice president of the PTA. And this elementary school feeds into the middle school that feeds into Stoneman Douglas High School.
Diagonally from the school on the same street.
Right, on the same street, around the block from our house. I had consequently started my education career at that middle school as a teacher there for 10 years. It was my life as a teacher. It was, I created the best friends from that school that maintained being my friends. So fast forward to that day, we had picked up Bradley, and we had come back to the house, and Dawn met somebody in the driveway from the PTA, and they were talking, and all of a sudden we're hearing sirens and helicopters. And that's one thing that resonates with us. Even I would say it's our PTSD. Whenever we hear helicopters and sirens, our whole family just kind of braces because of those sounds. You know, and I heard those sounds, and you know, as the amount of police cars grew, you knew it was something big going on. You didn't know what it was. It was going across the highway that just passed in our backyard as well, which backs up to the Everglades. And at the same time, I'm getting texts from people. I had received a multitude of texts during that time from teachers that were at the schools on lockdown, as well as from friends who had scanners across the country, as well as friends in law enforcement. So I knew it was going on. And at the same time, I'm trying to keep my son at bay. Dawn's in the driveway. She's hearing the same thing. I text her, get her in to take to Bradley, and I jump back to the phone. And all I want to do is run over around the block and go to that school and help out, because I've been trained in crisis management as an administrator. I actually started the district on some more hard-lined protocols and scenarios where they actually use like flash noises in the halls for staff to learn, and we did it in conjunction with the Margate Police Department nearby, and that really started that kind of process of the Code Red lockdown. So I was a part of that. I knew what that was. We did it all the time, but when I got the text that there was a shooting at Douglas, it was something that we couldn't imagine. Our school, this great school that's tucked away in the in the corner of the suburbs of South Florida, and very affluent area, and what happened? It can't be true. And so just like when a car accident happens, it happens in a millisecond, but it also, you see every second through there. And each of those seconds as the clocks ticked, my friend's texting me how his students need to go to the bathroom. They've been on lockdown for 3-4 hours. It was intense, and there was a lot that went through it. But again, it doesn't compare to what the people in the schools faced. It was really the days that followed that really resonated for us. Actually, let me back up 1 second. We're a very close neighborhood, community, and street. On our street, as we affectionately called the 108, just happened to be families like us with kids our age. And right next to us lived the Guttenbergs, who, we knew since their children, since Jamie was born. That's when we moved into that house. And so we watched her grow up to 14. Our kids were all best friends, and there were connections. There was, the parents were teachers in the district and psychologists in the district, and they all gathered at our house, and therapists. And they all gathered at our house to just kind of get the news together. We put the kids together, ordered them a pizza, and we all just sat horrified in front of the TV screen and going back in text, and mostly with Fred Guttenberg was our biggest concern. Obviously, I have several students and friends that are affected, but our friend Fred still couldn't locate Jamie. He found his son Jesse, but they couldn't locate Jamie. So
we're all texting,
we're texting and we're waiting, and we're they're sending out, has anyone seen her? Please call this number, and we're shooting that out.
And there was at one point they said that they thought that they did locate her, and then that was false. Hope.
Right. There was a lot of unknowns. There was, I don't know how much, and I won't belabor the details, but there was some delays in responses and information passed, and so there was a lot of unclarity whether or not they had the suspect, whether he's in the neighborhood, and
which was right near us, and
right.
We didn't even know, and yeah.
And so the parents were, unfortunately, the last to find out that they had lost their children, just based on process of who returned home. And so we hadn't heard from Fred, and we knew the news was getting worse. And it was true. And, the days that followed were really the ones that were most impactful for our family. I took to the only thing I knew, which was to help the best way I can, which is the same spirit that Jack is, in that I immediately started finding out who I can help and how. I stood out. We went to this school a lot, as much as it troubled us to go there. We went there and we talked to the children, and I found myself in this space of just being comforter. Comforting people and talking to people. And I said, I have to do more. I was recruited as a chaperone to go with the kids to the state capitol, where I sat next to the governor. I sat with the kids. We went on a rotation of going to different doors of the people there, and some had closed doors for us. Obviously, where they sat with gun reform was where we were able to talk, and these kids did the unimaginable. They spoke up beyond the adults, and they told the adults that they have to listen, and we have. But the message kind of seem to dissipate there, as things do. They get shadowed by other shootings and other things in the news. And we're, oh yeah, and then I went with the kids to Washington to March for Our Lives. Had, front row spot. It was just an interesting time period. I got to know a lot of the kids that you saw on the news and the cover of Time magazine, and became friends with Manuel Oliver. We love him so much. And he became a hero to Bradley because Bradley's an artist. And so it's just, I could go on, but it's impacted our lives forevermore. We didn't want to leave and come to Manhattan Beach because we didn't want to leave our community. That was in a time of peril. But things were already leading us down that road. There were so many circumstances that said we had to move closer to our family here. And, shortly after that, we did that. And that's where Dawn met Lois. We didn't want to tell people that we were coming from Parkland. We just wanted to try to start fresh. And thank goodness we didn't, because it causes us to push forward with this message that's hard for both of us to deal with.
When I was picking Bradley up from school, we were actually stuck we have crossroads, sort of like, I don't know, anywhere, crossroads where our schools were, because the elementary's right here and the high school's right here. It had already, by the time I got him in line, there were already choppers and motorcycle cops coming everywhere. So by the time I got home is when it was super crazy. But had I not picked him up at that time, I would have never been able, because they locked everything down. I have friends who all their kids were in lockdown for hours, and that's what Andy was saying in the middle school, the high school,
Yeah, and not only that, Clifford, but when you hear the helicopters overhead, I don't know how it impacts you guys, but when you hear it and this is what the news doesn't always report, but we heard it for 3 days over that school while all those children and everybody stayed in that school. And I'm talking about those that perished, because there was just too much to go through, that it wasn't an immediate scene to clean up. Parents couldn't there for
see
days.
Their children, and it was there for days. And then the helicopters, which, I'm sure it does our whole community there. But even here, when we hear the helicopters and the sirens all the time, that's very hard for our family, because it went on for weeks and weeks after that, because news stations and we're just on our streets were blocked. You couldn't get out of our main streets for weeks and weeks. So
it's so moving to hear you talk about it. Thank you so much for sharing with it. I remember when it happened that there was something different about it. Than it wasn't the first time we had experienced something like this, but for some reasons, those kids that spoke up were so brave and so clear.
Funny, not funny, but something that Manny. I don't use the words Manny uses. He's very well spoken. But he said they effed with the wrong community, because our kids, this was a very these kids are brilliant. Backed by really good families that cared and were supported education and our children, and we're very involved community. It's a very small community. And so they but it was,
it impacted the wrong community.
Right. Because
there's no right community for it either.
Right. Not at all. We're not saying that, but these children, the education and the backgrounds that they're from, this is what, almost as if this is what they were, I don't know how to say it. They were meant to speak out, and they've done an amazing job.
They have made a change. They definitely have made a change. Because I was going to do this with you all today, I've spent the last couple of days on YouTube watching reports of Parkland and the March for Our Lives, and I didn't know that Manuel was going to be part of the town hall. Because I saw a couple feature stories about him and his art. And he seems like an amazing man too. And I'm so glad that you're able to share with Fred is going to come talk, because they've both been such powerful voices in this. And, you know, they made such a strong and indelible statement at the beginning with the never again, you know, the way those kids spoke about never again, and Emma's silence at that rally. And I was thinking, you know, that was just the first step, that I think we are still going to see the wave of what their impact set into motion. It's funny, we just live in a world now that's just crisis after crisis after crisis. It's hard to gauge what's taking hold and what's going to be made different. But watching all the Parkland footage and reportage over the last couple of days really once again impressed me by that, just how incredible those children were. I mean, to think they're teenagers and they have had more vision and courage and fortitude than the leaders that are already in play. You know, it's amazing.
And you know, the news never goes back to report. So I guess that'll be my mouth that'll do that. But if you look to all of the parents, look, I lost my brother when I was a kid. My parents fell apart. I have many friends and family in similar situations. The hardest thing to do is get up and fight. And you'll find that each of these parents have gotten up and fought. Some are school board members. You know, Manny creates these murals all over the country, and Fred tackles the government, and they each are doing things in their own right. And it's just, if we could just take a little piece of what they do and push that a little further through somebody else and somebody else, this should be the virus that's spreading. This is what should be happening. And you know, I'm sorry, but you know, this is going to might come as a surprise to Jack. But at first, I was not a supporter of his play. I didn't want to see it. I just lived through something like it. We see it on the news every day.
It was hard for Andy to listen to Bradley rehearse.
Yes, I mean, my son, after just going through this, is now, you know, in a
9
role
years
where,
old.
yeah.
Right.
So,
And,
but I just wanted to say that it wasn't until I saw the performance that I developed a deep admiration for it. You know, I don't want to give it away, but it's definitely a must-see. I know it's going to be hard for my community to watch and other communities that face the same thing. But the way that Jack just so eloquently puts it together is a must-see.
Andrew, could you show the picture we have of Fred Guttenberg? I just want to make sure that you know he's going to be part of the town hall.
Sure.
I also want to share a picture of the Bronstein family. Now that I'm a couple of years into knowing you all, you are an incredible family. You're a huge family. You're a tribe. When I came in January, I think you had a party. Andy, it was your mother's birthday, right? Wasn't that what the reason for the party was? And I came to your house, and your house was like a summer camp. I'm telling you, every 5 feet there was something you could spend 2 days doing. It was like an amusement park. It was so fabulous.
You should have been here through the toddler years, Clifford. When Dawn missed her calling as a kindergarten teacher, we have a lot of centers set up.
Listen, you're so lucky that on March 16th, I didn't call you and say, I'm coming to spend the quarantine with you, because I saw how you laid out.
I did invite you.
You laid out your pasta dinner for 5 yards, and I thought, well, if I have to be locked up someplace for the next 4 months, I'm going to the Bronsteins. Anyway, I also, while I have you and while I'm on my podcast about nightclubs, I just want to say that we began last year with a production at Lois's church that she has often been affiliated with to do theatrical productions. And a producer, the friend of hers there, Steve Campbell, engaged us to do a tribute to the sanctuary of the church. And while we were putting together the talent, we got a great group of performers to do this show. And Dawn came up to me and whispered in my ear, "My daughter's a really good singer." And so we had her sing a song, and she was this beautiful young girl, very charismatic young girl, great singer. And I kind of took an interest in her and featured her in a few things over the last year at Catalina Jazz Club and Rockwell and a few things. And I had her booked for a couple things this year that all got canceled by the COVID crisis. But I just know that when we're able to start up again, she's going to be one of my first calls. So, Sydney, we love you. We're thinking of you.
She'll be ready. And Clifford, if I could, because you showed the picture of our family, our older kids were graduates of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. I remember when my daughter Samantha was so upset that they put these big red gates on the front of this very safe school for protection. And I just, we were like, wow, it looks like a prison. You can put all the gates around the school.
It doesn't matter. I did want to note one thing. We just realized when you said when Tyler's birthday is, Lois, that's Jamie's birthday.
Whose?
It's Jamie's birthday on Monday.
Oh my gosh.
Would have
talk
been
about
her 17th
things.
birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And to tie that, my brother's birthday is the same as Jesse's birthday, Jamie's brother.
Right.
So irony happens.
Yeah, a lot of things. One more thing, or a couple actually. So when a few things that I feel like were, when we say serendipitous with you guys as well. When I went to the open house to welcome the new families on the Saturday prior to Bradley going into elementary school, and as Andy stated before, I didn't want anybody to know where we were from. I couldn't even handle it. I mean, obviously I still can't, you can tell, but I couldn't handle it at the time. And the first person that came up to me when I was there said, "Where are you from? Welcome, where are you from?" I said, "Florida." "Where in Florida?" "South Florida." "Where in South Florida?"
Coral Springs.
I said, "Coral Springs." He said, "Oh, that's Parkland." I was like, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, my sister is the drama teacher at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas." So that was in itself really crazy, because, what are the odds, right? And then a family that lives diagonal from us. I mean, they came many, many years prior, but they're also from Parkland. So,
and there's also a former school member living here. Well, I wasn't going to say her name.
Sorry.
I can bleep that off. But yeah, I'm sure she doesn't mind. But
who's friends with everybody we know back in Coral Springs and Parkland. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy how the universe connects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting what you said earlier, that that when you came here, you thought it might be a fresh start and you might not have to be reliving all these
memories
all the time. And here you find yourself carrying the message
in
such a profound way. And you do have to wonder if there is an unseen hand that orchestrates this sort of thing,
I know there's several.
Yeah.
And they are.
I have another video I want to share. As I said, Lois and I have worked on music together for many, many years. And in one of her last concerts, which was basically a concert of leading roles she had played in her career, one of her favorite roles had been in the play Little Women. And there's this gorgeous song from a production from the musical version of Little Women. And so after Jack's reading, and after I had met Andy and Dawn, and after all of that was in motion, I was having a show in Los Angeles at Rockwell Table and Stage, and I had asked Lois to come sing, and I had asked her to sing this song from Little Women before it had any sort of connection to this story. And one day, while I was preparing for that show, I got to thinking about how the lyrics to how the song is used in the show Little Women, mourning the death of a woman who died too young, related to what we were talking about with this play, Thoughts and Prayers. And so I asked Lois to sing it in that context. And I want to share that all with you now.
I never dreamed of this sorrow. I never thought I'd have reason to lament. I hoped I'd never know heartbreak. How I wish I could change the way things went. I wanted nothing but goodness. I wanted reason to prevail. I want life to go on. I want days of plenty. But I refuse to feel tragic. I am aching for more than pain and grief. There has got to be meaning. Most of all, when a life has been so brief, we have got to learn something. How can we give them any less? We want life to go on. We want days of plenty. We have to believe there is reason for hope. We have to believe that the answers will come. We can't let this defeat us. We won't let this defeat us. We have got to keep them here within us. So believe that they matter, and believe that they always will. They will always be with us. They'll be here in the days we get to live. They will live in our country. They will live as we carry on days of plenty.
That was very beautiful, Lois. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very moving. Well, we've come to the end of our time together. Thank you all so much for doing this. I, as I said earlier, I was very taken with both Andy and Dawn when I first met you. I thought you had such an amazing vibe and such an amazing substance, and right away I got on Facebook and started like saying, "Hey, I really like you guys," and just for the record, I like never do that ever. And so it's been very wonderful to know you better over the last year or so, and I appreciate you being a part of this. It's such a hard thing to talk about, and yet it's so important that we do. And Jack and Lois, Lois, you've been one of my dearest friends for the last 15 years or so. I admire you so much, and I value our time and our work together so much. You've been such an important part of my life and my career, and I'm really, really happy to have you back on my little show here, my little podcast that could. And Jack, I wish you tremendous goodwill and anything we can do to help you evolve this project further, because I think you've found a really powerful way to tell a story and carry a message. And I thank you for all your efforts and your inspiration and commitment to do that. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clifford. Love you.
And I guess the only thing I want to say, I want to thank my friend Andrew Apple for helping us put this together. I myself can barely send emails, so whenever there's anything that involves pushing buttons, I need to make a call. And next month, in August, I'm planning to do a program about Project Angel Food, which is my very favorite charity that I've been involved with for years and years. They're celebrating their 31st anniversary of bringing food and love to the disenfranchised. And in September, I'm going to be doing a show about the documentary Studio One Forever, which I'm very proud to be a part of. I'm being interviewed alongside Bruce Valanche and Melissa Rivers and all sorts of amazing people that talk about the heyday of the very famous Los Angeles disco from the 70s. And anyway, this has been a very meaningful episode of my podcast. Usually, just singing show tunes is enough for me, but today we dipped in something a little even deeper, so that feels good too. So thank you all so much for participating, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Griffin.
Love
Thank you, Clifford.